Hello? Are we here? I hope so, because I'm starting. Hello! Welcome to Torn Book Club for this Sunday, March 8th of 2015. I am your host, Sarumann, aka Josh. And I know we started a little late today. I see that we got a lot of people in the chat already. I apologize for the lateness. We had a little bit of a technical problem here. The regular internet that I use decided not to work today. So I had to scramble and get everything connected through the 4G on my phone. So that's what we're using right now. So hopefully things will work out okay. You may have noticed there's a little something missing. Um, that would be my hair. I got a nice big old haircut yesterday. Uh, and that was there are reasons for that I won't go into here because it leads to talking about certain things that I'm not quite at liberty to talk about yet. But yes, there's a lot less me on my head. Rangers is saying it's the season for a haircut, and it is. It is. It's very warm here today, which is probably part of the reason why the internet cut out because our in Los Angeles for some reason, whenever there is any type of weather shift or weather that is beyond just like a very narrow normal uh, beyond like a very normal uh, window of weather, utilities tend to go nuts. Um, so that's a fun little thing to deal with in LA. Um, so let me expand the chat up here a little bit so that I can read everybody. Aravandi saying, "Hey guys, I'm just popping in for real quick. Won't be able to stay for book club today because it's the last day of my final college courses and I desperately have to finish my assignments before midnight, so bye for now. And I'll see all of you next week when I'm free of the courses once and for all. Wish me luck, and good luck to you, Eru. I wish you all the luck in the world. This is I've been there. I know how intense it can be. So you focus on what you need to, and we'll see you next week. And good luck with everything." Rovandir mentioned my shirt earlier. Yes, this was a late birthday present that was given to me by Light of the King at the One Last Party. Um, I was I chose not to wear it last week because we were talking games and I wanted to wear my gaming shirt, but I promised her that I would wear it on the show, and so now I'm doing it, and she is not here. So go figure. Anyway, she'll watch the archive. She'll see the shirt, and she'll know. uh, so uh, talking about we were talking about games yesterday or last week, I should say. Time, what a weird thing. Um, Last week we were talking about games, and I had mentioned that I had gotten a shipment of some of my old stuff from back east, and one of them was a card game based on Middle Earth, and it was still down in my car, so I couldn't bring it up to show everybody, but I have it with me now. And it's from the mid to late 90s. It's called Middle Earth: The Wizards, and it's a very cool looking game. These are some of the cards. And the premise of the game is that you are a wizard who assembles a fellowship and takes them on a journey through Middle Earth. At least I believe that's the premise. This was back in the days when gaming was really a very niche thing, and the hardcore gamers could really get into the rules. So this is a card game that has two huge rule books. Look at this. This is the player's guide for this card game. And then we have the Wizard's Companion, which I don't even know what this is. It's just more rules. So, and I have a couple loose cards that fell out of the album in transit. But one of the things that you can do is you can go to different locations in Middle Earth, and they have all these map locations on there, and they're areas like I didn't even know existed. Like, okay, the Woodland Realm we all know. Withered Heath, Forest Shell, never heard of it. And I know I'm like sort of betraying my lack of Tolkien knowledge by not knowing some of this stuff, like Holland and Cardolan, and they sort of show their location on the Middle Earth map, so you can sort of see where they are. And they're also like locations that are talked about, but there are locations that are talked about, but are not really seen in very much detail in the books. For instance, the Grey Mountains, or at least in the books that we consider to be the main part of the Lord of the Rings canon. So lots of cards here. I also found that I've got a whole bunch of Magic the Gathering cards. I need to go through those and see if any of them are worth money, because I haven't played that game in about 15 years. So that's Temple is saying, if one Tolkien fan forgets, it's easy to find another who remembers. Yes, it's easy to find another who remembers. What's less easy to find is one who remembers who won't then mock the other for not remembering. At least in certain circles. Had a little bit of a run-in with some fans this week who, some sci-fi fans who basically decided that every time they could interject something into the conversation that was or they could point out somebody's factual inconsistency, they tended to gloat about it, and that's never fun behavior. I never liked that. Like, you add something to the conversation, that's great, but you don't need to like rub it in people's faces like, oh, you call yourself a sci-fi fan? I thought you would know that. That's not how these things work. But I realize that's an uphill battle, and I'm sure there are some people who would disagree with me on that. But so be it. Temple is saying, not a mocker here. I think it's unfortunate when people do that. It's really arrogant. And I would agree, Temple, and I was not saying that you were a mocker. Not at all. You are not and have never been. Ava says, that's not being a fan, it's just being a rude person. Very true. So, getting on to some of the business of the week, our book of the month is Middle-earth Madness by theonering.net, by a whole bunch of authors on the One Ring. We're going to be having our big discussion on this book on April 5th, and hopefully we'll have some of, if not many, of the contributors from the One Ring to this show on it. I think I said that right. From contributors from the One Ring to the book on the show. It's been a week, folks. It's been a week. I'm reading it right now, and I'm loving the historical insight into what went into making the Hobbit movies, and they point out, and it was something that I vaguely remember that I think other people might remember, but there was a time when it seemed like Warner Brothers was going to move on and make the Hobbit movies without Peter Jackson at all. And and Peter had written this very long and very heartfelt letter to the One Ring, explaining that and explaining why, and a lot of us, and I remember a lot of us feeling like, well, if they're going to make a Hobbit movie without Peter Jackson, then it's not really the Hobbit movie we want. But luckily, that did not come to be, and Peter Jackson ended up doing it. So, yay for us, yay for everything that went down. Remander is saying, not gotten the book yet, have to figure out how Amazon works. It's very simple. You look for the book, you buy the book gets shipped to you, or if you have any sort of device like a smartphone or a Kindle or an iPad or anything like that, you can get the Kindle version for just a few bucks, and that's just as good. So, didn't really know what to talk about this week, so I'm going to be opening up the floor to all of you to discuss your memories of Middle Earth, your earliest memories of when you first got it, when you first. Rohinter is saying there are no Kindles in Denmark. Really? Wow. I did not realize that. That's very interesting. But regardless, you can still get a copy somewhere. So they're going to be talking about Kindle apps now. So big old coffee cup. So what I wanted to talk about today was sort of our memories of when we were first exposed to Middle Earth, our favorite memories of it, those little bits of going through it that struck us the deepest, or really resonated with us, or like that turning point that turned us from somebody who was interested in this into a fan. I have all those moments well stored in my brain, and I'd love to. I'll talk about those, and you can mention yours in the chat, or you can call the hotline, or you could let me open up the Skype line. You can Skype in. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, talk amongst yourselves. And there we go. And the Torn Book Club Skype line is now on. So if you wish to, you can come in. So Sarah Swift is saying, my first is my dad and I reading The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings and seeing Lord of the Rings Fellowship together. Now my nephew and niece are reading them. Awesome. There's a lot of people talking about whether or not Amazon is safe. Amazon, I think, is quite safe. Never had a problem with them. So Sarah Swift is also saying, my dad is gone, but the Lord of the Rings spirit lives on, which is cool. And that is very cool. Abe is saying, I first learned about Middle Earth when I saw people LARPing. I wanted to know what that was about. I think I was about 13. that's a that's a more that's a more unique way of discovering Middle Earth. I think that's kind of cool. Um, my first exposure to Middle Earth, as many people from my generation, was the Rankin Bass Hobbit movie, and I was fascinated by it, and I loved it, and I watched it over and over again, and I knew that it was based on a book by a man named J.R.R. Tolkien, um, and I know that my dad had those books. He had The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and I was trying. I wanted to read them, but I was nervous because I was sort of a late bloomer when it came to reading, and The Lord of the Rings looked very daunting, and I didn't want to take that up yet. I eventually read The Hobbit and loved it. Um, but for years, these copies of The Lord of the Rings were sitting on the bookshelf. And as time went on, I saw the Ralph Bakshi Lord of the Rings movie. I saw the Rankin Bass Return of the King. So I felt like I sort of knew the story, but I saw how big these books were, and I'm like, okay, there's clearly a lot more to this. And so eventually, when I was about 16, I finally read The Lord of the Rings, and kind of changed my life. Um, Lady Rowan is saying, I was 10 and I started reading and did not stop until I was through all three books, and I'm now 53 and still read them at least once a year. Yeah, I used there was a good period of time where I was reading The Lord of the Rings once a year. That kind of fell to the side a little bit in recent years, but I do like going back every now and then and reading passages from it. And I should mention that Tolkien Reading Day is coming up later this month. Let me see if I can find the actual date. Hang on one second. It is March 28th. I meant to make a graphic for that, but I haven't yet. Um, Temple saying, we all had copies of the books around my house for as long as I can remember. I must have been 7 or 8 when my mom read The Hobbit to me and my brothers, and I saw the Rankin Bass The Hobbit around that time too. Excellent. Ravandier saying, I first learned about Middle Earth when I was small and got a lot of ear surgeries and the like in general, and was stuck a lot being sick. My foster father got his hand on The Hobbit and read it for me. I sort of forgot about it again until we had to make a school musical version of The Hobbit when I was 12. Interesting. I know that there's a musical version of The Hobbit that a lot of schools do. Um, I'm assuming the one that you did may not be the same one that we have here in America. Um, but and like you, Ravandier, I had a lot of ear surgeries when I was a kid too. Um, but my recovery time was more. I spent more time getting into Dune during my ear surgery recovery time, which was a very weird thing to get into at that age because I was probably about maybe 10 or so. Um, but yeah, that's how that played out. Uh, that's a story for another day. Um, I like Temple's scenario where they had where her mom read The Hobbit to her and her brothers. That it's always such a nice bonding experience when parents read Tolkien to their kids. Um, and I didn't really have that too much growing up. I mean, I did get stories read to me when I was a kid, but never The Hobbit. I sort of came to that on my own. Um, what does Lady Rowan say here? I have an early set where I highlighted my favorite passage and I still refer to them. That's awesome. Um, I never went that far to highlight my favorite passages. I just sort of remember roughly where they were and would just flip to those pages. Um, and Lady Rowan says, I always wish someone would have read it with me. Yeah, I do kind of wish that too, and who knows, maybe I'll be able to read it to somebody in my future. Ava says, my mom read a lot to me when I was a child, but never The Hobbit. She liked to read Enid Blyton books and such. I don't know who that is, but okay. um, Temple saying we camped out in our living room when my mom decided to read the novels to us. We did that with The Hobbit and The Princess Bride. Oh, those are two great choices. I love The Princess Bride, and it's such a fun read too. Um, and as is The Hobbit. I find The Hobbit is a very fun read. Lord of the Rings. I'll be honest. When I first tried reading Lord of the Rings, it took me probably about 5 attempts to get through um, the the first several chapters of it, just because I always felt that the Old Forest portion was really kind of a distraction and didn't serve the plot a whole lot. Um, I mean, it built the characters up in an interesting way, but I felt that it was too much of a diversion from what I wanted, which was to see them get on the road and get the ring debris, and and then go on from there. And so we had there are a few chapters where everything just sort of stops, and they meet Tom Bombadil and go to his house and have a jolly old time, and then eventually Frodo decides they need to keep going. The whole time I'm like, yes, you do need to keep going. I need to find out what happens with this ring. So it took me a little while to sort of get through all that, but once I did, I just ate those books up like you wouldn't believe. And Temple saying, my mom says we also did The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but I don't remember that. Oh. And The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is another excellent excellent book for reading to children. Ava's saying Enid Blyton is a famous British children's author. I'll have to look her up. Eventually, at some point, we're going to have to do a month just on children's books, because there are some great children's books out there. And I know that Dr. Seuss, well, his birthday was celebrated not too long ago. I think maybe like last week or so. Um, so I think it would be nice to do a month on children's books. I'm sorry, I keep getting distracted by this game over here. I want to get back into it, see if I can convince some people to play it. Um, so, and I've talked about this before, but like the big turning point for me, where I went from being a casual reader to a fan, um, when I was reading The Lord of the Rings, it happened about midway through The Two Towers, and the scene that really got me was the scene where Gandalf expels Saruman from Theoden, or expels the illness that Saruman had put on Theoden from him, and brings Theoden back into the real world. And I remember Tolkien describing that scene, and it felt very grand. And in my mind, as I'm picturing this, like I am picturing this huge cinematic scene where Theoden rises up, and you can hear the swelling orchestra, and this like big victorious scene, and that's when I was like, oh my god, this needs to be a full movie trilogy. And from there, I just read through the rest of it and fell in love, and one of the things that I did after that, which I know I've talked about before, but we'll talk about it again for a couple of the new people who are watching. Um, After I finished reading The Lord of the Rings, I was probably about 16. This would put it around 1993, 94, something like that. Uh, and One of the things that I did after that was immediately went out to the local bookstore and got every book I could find on screenwriting and taught myself screenwriting in order to write the screenplays for a Lord of the Rings trilogy. And uh, I got pretty far in it. I actually wrote a screenplay for The Fellowship of the Ring. That's about as far as I got, because at about that point they announced the movies, and that Peter Jackson was going to be directing them. So I sort of gave up the dream there. But I still was I was very enthusiastic about it. I learned a lot about screenwriting, um, and and of course it was my first screenplay, and of course it was a terrible screenplay because I was very nervous about taking stuff out that was in the book, and so what it ended up being was a lot of people speaking in very big monologues, um, and yeah, everybody spoke in very big monologues. The pacing was dreadfully slow, um, and for some reason, I felt the need to front load it with just tons of exposition. Um, so I, um, yeah, the beginning of my fellowship script has a full a full version of the Battle of the the Battle of the Last Alliance. Um, yeah, the Battle of the Last Alliance with like full dialogue with between Elendil, Isildur, and Gil-galad, and Sauron even has a couple lines of dialogue as well. Um, and then there was I put the whole riddle scene from The Hobbit in there, um, and yeah, it was pretty it was a pretty ridiculous script, and I still have a copy of it, and I've talked to Cliff and Justin about maybe one day getting some of our actor friends together and doing a table read of it on either Torn Tuesday or Torn Book Club, just to point out how hard it is to adapt something like Tolkien to the screen. Uh, Sarah Swift is saying 26 days now until April 1st through 12th. My adventure begins in New Zealand. And I'm like a kid with a cookie jar. Oh, nice. I'm very jealous of you, Sarah. I still have never been to New Zealand, but I know you'll have a great time. Everybody I know who has been there has had a great time. Keely from Happy Hobbit is over there right now, and she's sending back pictures, and it looks like she's having a blast. Um, and I can't wait to hear all the stories after she gets back. Um, and Temple seems to be agreeing with that. She says, I went there several years ago and it was the best vacation of my life. That's what I keep hearing. One of these days I'm going to do it. I'm going to throw caution to the wind, renew my passport, and head to New Zealand for a month. So, so that's essentially my story with Tolkien and Middle Earth. And of course, as you can see from my huge collection of Middle Earth card game cards, like this is that, and they're all falling out too. So, what's this? Yeah, I need to sort all these things. As you can see from the huge amount of cards that I have, and this is just one binder. I still have a whole other binder full of cards sitting over in the corner. My obsession was quite severe, and also in the shipment of stuff from back east, there were a whole bunch of Tolkien biographies that I had completely forgotten that I ever owned. So I'm going to be going through those as well. So I was a little bit obsessed, and still am. Sarah's saying, I gave the idea of the One Ring about the One Ring tour with whoever was in it. So start putting away now and yeah. Okay, so yeah, I think I heard something about doing a One Ring tour uh, in New Zealand, and of course another thing we've been talking about is doing a One Ring cruise at some point. I don't know the details of either of those, except that it's something we want to do. Um, and it was something a bunch of us were talking about before, during, and after the One Last Party, because, like so many of you, um, none of us want the One Last Party to be our last party ever. That it was simply our last party celebrating the movies at Oscar season, which has been our tradition. Um, and since that's clearly not going to be happening again anytime soon, we had our big bang, our big our big last hurrah. But as many of you know, we're not going anywhere. We still have lots of stuff we want to do. There's a 20th anniversary of the One Ring coming in a couple years. Um, there are anniversaries of the movies. Um, Lady Rowan is saying, I just got back from New Zealand in December. You will never forget your adventure. Oh my God, everybody's been to New Zealand except for me. Oh, no, I'm kidding. That's awesome. I'm glad you had a great time, Lady Rowan. Um, yeah, everything I've heard about New Zealand just says you go there and it's pretty much a life-changing experience. And so I definitely do want to go. And I want you all to go. I want everybody to go and have fun. Um, sorry, just keep looking at the cards. Um, and so I hope to join you at some point. Um, and I'm sure that one day I will. Hopefully, if what I got this haircut for pans out, I will have more of an ability to go, and I'll leave that there. uh, so, I'm keeping this one a little bit short because, for one, we started a little bit late. There isn't a whole lot to talk about. This is really just more of a vloggy type episode. But before I end, I do want to mention that uh, earlier this year I had talked about doing a separate pre-recorded series that would go through all of the big Middle Earth books: Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Children of Hurin, all of those chapter by chapter. And I still want to do that, but it's taking a lot longer than I anticipated to write these episodes, let alone shoot and edit them, and I don't want to keep all of you waiting. So what I'm going to start doing, starting next week, is I'm going to start going through the books here on the show live. Uh, I may do them in bigger chunks than what I plan for the other series, but I'm going to start with the Silmarillion, and we're going to talk about the first two chapters, which are pretty much the creation myth of Middle Earth, and they're not that long, but they are very dense. There's a lot of information in those two chapters that comes at you fast and furious. I would say that there is not a wasted sentence in that. So I would like to start going over that, and also, and it'll give us more to talk about, and it'll also help me formulate how I want to write these episodes. These pre-recorded episodes, which I still plan to do, and put them in a nice big playlist on YouTube that people can watch whenever they feel like. But for now, we'll talk about them on the live show. So, because I had promised that we would talk about the Silmarillion, and I don't want to put that off for too long. So we're going to start talking about the Silmarillion next week. So I hope that many of you will be able to come back for that. And on April 5th, we'll be talking Middle Earth Madness with many of the writers. And in the meantime, you can read it. I think it's a very well done book. My compliments to J.W. Braun, the editor, for putting it together. So yeah, that's where I'll leave it now. Next week we'll start talking Silmarillion, and then we'll keep talking Silmarillion, and then we'll keep talking Silmarillion, and then eventually we'll get through the whole thing, and in the meantime I'll start doing the pre-recorded series, but you can get what is a little bit like a preview of what that series is going to be, which I think will be fun. So until then, thank you all for joining in. Ava Ravandier, Sarah Swift, Lady Rowan, Takeo Temple. Who else am I missing? Eru was here briefly, but had to leave. And some of our regulars, like I Stole the One Ring, Light of the King, and Suzanne, were not able to make it this week. So hopefully they'll be here next week, when we will be talking about the creation of Middle Earth in fictional form, not the creation of Middle Earth in Tolkien's brain, which took a very, very long time and is very well documented. But we'll be talking about the origin myth of Middle Earth in the Silmarillion. So I will see you all then. Get your copies of the Silmarillion ready, and I'll see you next week, and never stop reading.